My own son told me, "Mom, you're ruining our vacation. Just leave." So I did. I stood there in the snow, suitcase in hand, watching them laugh inside my house. They didn't know the Airbnb they rented for their perfect Christmas getaway was registered under my name. Every light, every door code, every payment, mine. So when midnight came and they popped open their champagne, I switched off the power. And finally, I stopped pretending to be the fool in their family. You think that was cruel? Wait till you see what happened when the police showed up. Hit like, drop a comment if you've ever been underestimated, and don't forget to subscribe. This story burns slow and ends in fire. I was rolling cinnamon sugar over a sheet of dough when my phone lit up with Ethan's name. It was a gray Oregon afternoon, the kind that sits low on your chest and makes the kettle sound louder than it should. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, took a breath to quiet the little flutter I always get when my kids call, and answered. "Hey, Mom," he said, soft and sweet, the voice he used when he was little and didn't want me to know he'd cracked the cookie jar. "Got a minute?" "For you? Always," I said, trying to keep my heart from running ahead of my mouth. He laughed, warm enough to melt a stick of butter. "So, Brittany and I were talking. We were thinking a real Christmas this year. Pine trees, snow, sweaters none of us need. The kids want a cabin in the mountains, somewhere with a fireplace, just family." Just family. The words hit a tender place. For the past few holidays, just family meant pictures on their Instagram and a disposable plate for me at the end of the table after the stories were told and the good wine was gone. But hope is a stubborn thing. It gets up even when you've told it to sit down. "That sounds wonderful," I said. I could almost see the scene. My 2 grandbabies in footy pajamas, paper crowns from cracker boxes, the pop of the fire when the sap pockets burst. "Have you found a place?" "That's the thing," he said. "We saw this perfect spot on Airbnb, A-frame, big windows, you'd love it. But the platform wants the booking under one person, and with my work card, long story. Could you maybe help, just to hold it? I'll transfer you tonight." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear and looked out my kitchen window. The neighbor's maple stood bone bare and brave against a sky the color of old pewter. I thought about all the times "I'll transfer you tonight" had rolled into "we'll settle up later," and then into silence. I thought about how silence can feel like a cinder block on your chest when you're 62 and your house is suddenly too big and too quiet. "What about the dates?" I asked, because practical questions keep you from crying. "And how many beds?" He exhaled, relieved. He knew I'd say yes. "December 23rd to 26th. 3 nights. 2 queens, a bunk room for the kids, a loft. It's perfect, Mom. There's a sledding hill. The description says you can smell the pines from the couch." Pines from the couch. I smiled despite myself. "Send me the link." The text came with a burst of confetti emojis from Brittany. Can't wait. Kids are shrieking. It's gonna be epic." She added a photo of 2 tiny suitcases lined up by a doorway, little handles extended like they were reaching for the future. I clicked the listing. The photos were the kind that make you breathe deeper. Syrup-slick wood, windows swallowing the mountains, a stone hearth with a dent just where a child's head might tuck under a grandmother's chin. The host had named it the Fur and Ember. There was a bowl of green apples on the counter, shamelessly shiny. Someone had staged the place like people actually loved each other there. "Okay," I said. "This is nice." "Right?" Ethan said. "If we don't grab it, someone else will. Could you do it now? I'll Venmo the second you send the confirmation." I looked at the flour on my hands. I thought of my late husband's flannel shirt folded in the hall closet, still holding the shape of his shoulders. I thought of the tiny ritual I kept on Christmas Eve, even now. 1 candle in the window, for any soul that needed to find its way home. Send me everyone's full names, I said, and the kids' ages. Hosts like to know. Mom, you're the best, he said, already half gone in his mind to the mountain air and the sizzle of bacon in a cast iron pan. Brit's grinning. She says this is going to heal a lot of, past stuff. Past stuff. I swallowed that like a pill without water. Tell her I'm excited, I said, and I meant it. Excitement is a kind of courage. I sat at the kitchen table with my reading glasses and my debit card, the light going bruised outside. The price stung a little. Not terrible, not impossible, but enough that I did the math twice, then a third time the way widows learn to do, counting not just dollars but dignity. I'd been hosting my own little place down in the valley for 2 years now. A tidy ranch I'd turned into a vacation house after the mortgage was finally mine and the nights were too long. It had kept me afloat and busy and talking to people through message threads signed, "Warmly Mary, your host." I liked being useful. I liked being prepared. I filled in the boxes: name, dates, number of guests. I wrote Mary Carter in the little line where the platform asked who would be responsible for the stay, and the words glowed back at me like they were pleased with themselves. Before I hit confirm, I caught my reflection in the black window. Soft jaw, stubborn jaw, a woman who had taught 2 boys to tie their shoes and taught herself not to apologize for breathing. I pressed the button. The little spinning circle became a green check mark and a ping bloomed in my inbox. Reservation confirmed, the Fur and Ember. I sent the screenshot to our family group chat, the one that had been quiet for months except for photos of spaghetti and a school certificate and a meme about Mondays. Brittany's reply came fast. Yes, you're an angel. Sending Venmo now. Another ping. Venmo. Brittany paid you €0. The app was doing that thing it does when a transfer's processing. I stared at the screen. Then the kettle screamed on the stove like it had something to say about all this. Ethan called back before I could move. Okay, Mom, I'm running into a meeting. You're amazing. If Venmo is weird today, I'll swing by tonight with cash. Promise. Drive safe, I said. And only after I hung up did I realize those 2 words are a mother's entire heart in a sentence. Drive safe. Eat something. Tell me if it hurts. Don't leave me behind. I opened the listing again and zoomed in on the fireplace. The stones were river round, the grout dark in the grooves. You could put stockings there, 3 red, 1 white. Maybe I'd knit names into the cuffs like I used to. Maybe we'd play charades. Maybe Brittany would let me braid our granddaughter's hair without saying, "Oh, I'll do it." She's sensitive. A notification bubbled up from the platform. Message your host to introduce yourself and your group. Old habits kicked in. I typed the polite note you send when you want to be liked by strangers. Hello. We're a small family traveling for Christmas. 2 adults, 2 children, and my mother. That's me. We love quiet mornings and early nights. We'll treat your home like our own. I hovered over the last sentence. Then I deleted it. I've learned the hard way that you should only promise what other people can keep. I made a list on an index card, the way I do for holidays when the world tips into chaos. Grocery staples, board games, a medium ham because Ethan likes ham and Brittany pretends she doesn't, but always takes the best slices. Hot cocoa mix with the tiny marshmallows, the kids' favorite cereals, extra socks. By the time the streetlights blinked awake, the house smelled like cinnamon and a decision. I wrapped 2 jars of cranberry chutney and tied them with twine. I set aside the sweater I saved for Christmas Eve, navy wool, thin at the elbows from all the years. I stood in the doorway of the spare room where I keep the luggage and touched the handle of the old red suitcase, my husband's last travel bag, scuffed at the corners like an old apple. My phone buzzed with a message from Brittany. We told the kids, they're screaming. You're going to laugh. This trip is exactly what we need. Exactly what we need. I put the phone face down on the counter. Outside, it began to snow, the quiet kind that makes even the garbage cans look holy for a minute. I closed my eyes and listened to the small, hopeful noises a house makes when it believes people are coming. Later, after the news and the dishes and the weather report promised a white Christmas if we're lucky, I checked Venmo again. Processing. I checked my bank app, nothing yet. I told myself it was fine. People forget. People get busy. Money moves slow when it's supposed to move fast. I lit one candle in the window, early. Not because anyone was lost, I told myself, but because light is a promise you keep even when no one's watching. When I went to bed, the confirmation email was still open on my phone. I traced the dates with my thumb, December 23rd, 26. I whispered them like a prayer. The pines would smell like forgiveness. The fire would make us honest. We would be just family. And for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep with my suitcase unzipped and my heart a little open, the way you leave a door cracked for someone you love to come through without knocking. By the second week of December, the Venmo transfer was still processing. I'd stopped checking every morning, but hope is a slow learner. Every time I opened the app, I half expected to see the green numbers glowing back at me, proof that I wasn't just a convenient wallet with wrinkles. On Tuesday, Brittany called. "Hey, Mary," she sang, bright as a Christmas commercial. "Quick thing, could you add the early check-in? The kids will lose their minds if we sit in the car for hours. Oh, and Ethan said you can just put it on the same card. We'll settle later." The same card. My card. I swallowed the lump of air that wanted to turn into a question. "Sure, honey, I'll handle it." Because that's what mothers say. We handle it. When the call ended, I sat there at the kitchen table, surrounded by Christmas decorations that had no one to impress. The stockings were still in their storage box. The fake pine wreath leaned against the chair like it couldn't be bothered to pretend anymore. I opened the jewelry box I hadn't touched since my husband's funeral. Inside lay the gold locket he'd given me on our 30th anniversary. His picture on one side, mine on the other, smiling like we hadn't yet learned what silence costs. And beneath it, in a small velvet pouch, was the ring, the one he'd saved 3 paychecks for, the one I hadn't worn since his hands turned cold. I took them both to Jenkins Jewelry downtown. "Mary Carter," the old man said, recognizing me before I even spoke. "Haven't seen you since you brought that clock for repair." I smiled. Small, polite, the way women do when they're about to do something that feels like betrayal. "I need to sell these, Mr. Jenkins, just for now." He studied the ring under the fluorescent light. "Pretty piece. Sentimental?" "Was," I said. "Now it's practical." He nodded slowly. $800 for both. $800, the price of 40 years of holding hands through everything. I signed the slip, hands trembling, and told myself I was buying something sacred, togetherness. That's worth more than gold, right? That's what all the cards say. When I left the store, the wind tasted like metal. I tucked the envelope of cash deep into my coat pocket and walked past the bakery window where the college kids were laughing over hot chocolate. My reflection in the glass looked older than the snowflakes falling behind it. That night, I logged into my Airbnb account, typed in the host's name, the fur and ember, and clicked pay remaining balance. The screen blinked, then congratulated me for completing your reservation. I stared at the digital confetti that burst across the screen. Even computers pretend joy these days. Ethan texted around 9. "Mom, you're amazing. Britt says you're a lifesaver. We'll bring snacks and everything. Can't wait." No mention of the money. No, "Did you get reimbursed yet?" Just the easy confidence of people who believe love is a credit line with no limit. The next morning, I packed early. Folded sweaters, extra blankets for the kids, cocoa packets. I slipped the locket's empty chain around my neck. It felt strange without weight, like a lie you keep telling yourself will get lighter. By the end of the week, the Weather Channel said a blizzard was coming down from the mountains. Perfect Christmas weather. Brittany sent another text. So excited. Can't believe we pulled this together last minute. You're the best. Pulled this together. I smiled. I guess I was the this. On Friday, I drove to the grocery store to stock up for the cabin. The cashier, a girl young enough to still believe in miracles, scanned the ham and said, "You cooking for family?" "Yes," I said. "A big one." I didn't say that big families can still make small hearts. When I got home, the house smelled of cinnamon and exhaustion. I poured myself instant coffee and opened the email from Airbnb reminding me of the upcoming stay. Check-in, December 23rd, 3 p.m. Host, Mary Carter. For a moment, I didn't understand what I was reading. Then it hit me. Of course. My host account and my guest account shared the same email. The system had linked them. The reservation was under my own name. The irony made me laugh, soft and bitter, like a hiccup after crying. Somewhere in that laughter was the first crack of something larger. Because if my name was on the booking, it meant I could do whatever I wanted with it. But I wasn't thinking about revenge then. I was thinking about Christmas mornings that used to smell like pancakes and pine, about Ethan at 6 years old, his hair sticking up, yelling, "Santa came," before he'd even opened his eyes. I wanted that again. Not the Santa part, but the sound of someone needing me. So when Brittany called 2 days later and said, "Hey, could you also pick up some eggnog, the organic kind?" I didn't say no. I just wrote it on the list, right under ham glaze and forgiveness. On the 22nd, I laid out my red suitcase by the door. It looked excited. I almost did too. I checked Venmo one last time. Still nothing. Then I checked my heart. Still full. When you're a mother, you learn that love doesn't wait for payment. But maybe it should. The morning of December 23rd smelled like frost and coffee. I woke up before sunrise, too restless to eat. My red suitcase stood by the door like a loyal dog that didn't know where we were going, only that we had to go. The drive to the Fir and Ember took 3 hours up narrow roads that curved like question marks through the mountains. Pines stood heavy with snow, their branches bending low, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. I kept the radio on low, carols sung by voices too cheerful to be real. When I pulled into the long gravel driveway, the cabin appeared like something out of a postcard. A perfect triangle of wood and glass, chimney smoking, a wreath on the door, and 2 tiny figures, my grandkids, running circles in the snow. "Grandma, Grandma's here," they screamed, their voices piercing the cold. My heart lifted. Ethan came out wearing a flannel and that effortless grin that had always been my weakness. "Mom, you made it," Brittany followed, phone in hand, waving half-heartedly. "You beat us by 5 minutes. We were sure you'd get lost." "I left early," I said, stepping out of the car. Didn't want to miss the snow. I opened the trunk to pull out my bags, but Ethan held up his hand. "Oh, about that, Mom. We might have a small issue." That word, issue, it never means small. He scratched the back of his neck, looking anywhere but at me. "The sleeping arrangements are a little tight. Turns out the bunk room's smaller than we thought. Brittany's mom might drive up tomorrow, so we, don't really have space for another adult bed." I blinked, my fingers tightening on the handle of my suitcase. I thought the listing said 3 bedrooms and a loft. Brittany jumped in, her tone clipped, professional. "It does, but with the kids, the bags, and my mom possibly coming, it's, well, cramped. I just think it'd be nicer if you stayed somewhere with more comfort. There's a cute inn 10 minutes down the hill." I stared at her, words stuttering somewhere between disbelief and humiliation. "You want me to stay at an inn? On Christmas?" She smiled the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "It's only 3 nights, Mary. You'll still come for dinner, of course." My laugh came out sharp, brittle. "Dinner? In a house I booked?" Ethan's face hardened, his jaw twitching. Mom, don't make this awkward. The kids are excited. Let's just keep the vibe good, okay? Awkward. That's what it's called now, when a mother refuses to be erased. I looked down at my boots, at the snow crusting around the edges, and felt something inside me go still. Sure, I said quietly. Wouldn't want to ruin the vibe. I bent to grab my suitcase, but Ethan took it gently, as if helping. Let me get that for you. Brittany's right. There's a nice inn down the road. We'll cover the cost, okay? Cover the cost. The irony almost made me laugh. I nodded instead. Thank you, that's thoughtful. The kids ran up to hug me, snowflakes tangled in their hair. Grandma, come make snow angels. Not today, sweethearts, I said, kissing their heads. Grandma's tired. Brittany was already back on her phone, taking selfies with the cabin behind her. Ethan waved awkwardly. We'll see you tonight for dinner, okay? Bring that cranberry stuff you make. I got back in my car, the engine reluctant in the cold. Through the windshield, I watched them pose for a picture. Perfect little family framed by a house that didn't belong to them. Not really. The inn down the hill was a 2-story building that smelled faintly of pine cleaner and disappointment. The woman at the desk gave me a sympathetic smile when I told her I needed a room. Just for a few nights. Holiday season, huh? She said. Families can be a handful. I smiled back. You have no idea. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, the cheap comforter rustling like paper. My phone buzzed. A family group photo from Brittany. Christmas cabin vibes. Family time. I zoomed in on the picture. Ethan had his arm around Brittany. The kids were laughing. My suitcase, the red one, was still visible through the cabin window behind them. They hadn't even moved it. I stared at that little red rectangle in the photo until the edges blurred. Outside, the snow started again, slow, soft, relentless. I could hear carolers somewhere in town singing Silent Night. The irony wasn't lost on me. I opened my Airbnb host app, the one I used for my own rental property, mostly out of habit. And there it was, sitting at the top of the dashboard like a cruel joke. Reservation, the Fur and Ember. Guest, Brittany Collins, Deck 2326. Status, active. Host, Mary Carter. For a long moment, I didn't breathe. Then I laughed, not the bitter kind, not yet. The quiet kind, the laugh that comes when the truth slips its hand into yours and whispers, "You've been blind long enough." They hadn't just kicked me out. They were living in my listing, my cabin, my furniture, my mortgage, every door code, every security camera, every check-in message, all mine. I leaned back against the headboard, pulse steady now. The humiliation began to melt, replaced by something far more dangerous, clarity. I picked up my phone and called Airbnb support. The hold music was a slow jazz version of Jingle Bells. When the representative answered, cheerful and unaware, I smiled. "Hi," I said, my voice calm and steady. "This is Mary Carter, host of the Fur and Ember. I just need to confirm something about my guest this weekend." "Of course," the agent said. "What seems to be the issue?" "Oh, no issue at all," I said softly. "Just making sure everything's in my control." I hung up a few minutes later with all the information I needed and a power I hadn't realized I still had. Outside my window, the snow thickened, swallowing the road. Down the hill, I could see a faint glow where my cabin stood. For a moment, I imagined them inside, laughing, warm, safe, and I whispered to the glass, "Enjoy it while it lasts." Back at the inn, I couldn't sleep. The radiator hissed like it was trying to talk me out of something, but the words came out as steam. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, watching the orange light from the parking lot flicker across the plaster. Every flicker looked like a memory I didn't want. Around midnight, I sat up, opened my laptop, and signed into my host dashboard. "Welcome back, Mary Carter, superhost since 2021. I hadn't seen that little crown badge in a while. It used to make me proud. Tonight, it felt like armor. The listing for the fur in Ember opened with the same photos I'd stared at when Ethan first called. The big windows, the glowing fireplace, the bowl of fake apples. Everything looked so honest, but lies always look honest at first. Under messages from guests, I clicked the most recent thread. There it was. Guest, Brittany Collins. Her tone was polite, but I could almost hear her voice. All sugar, no soul. Hey Mary, thanks for letting us check in early. The place is even better than the pictures. You're an angel. We'll leave a great review, Angel. I laughed out loud. The sound startled even me. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind that comes from realizing the devil never hides. He just calls you mom. Scrolling further down, I saw my own automated message. Hello, Brittany. I'm your host, Mary. Please let me know if you need anything during your stay. She had replied with a thumbs up emoji. Simple, efficient, detached. Exactly the way she treated me in real life. Then I opened the security tab. The cabin's smart system was connected to my account. Cameras, door locks, thermostat, lights. When I first bought the place, I'd installed everything myself. YouTube tutorials, trial and error, bruised knees, burned fingers. It had made me proud. Now, it made me dangerous. One click and I could see live footage from the living room camera, perched discreetly on the mantel. The feed loaded slowly, then came into focus. There they were, my family, sitting by the fire I had paid for. Ethan on the couch, beer in hand. Brittany scrolling through her phone. The kids curled up on the floor watching a movie, the light from the screen dancing over their faces. They looked cozy, like a commercial for togetherness, and I was the outtake that got cut. I watched Brittany reach for the remote. Turn it up, she said. Grandma's probably asleep by now anyway. Ethan chuckled. You think she's mad? Nah, Brittany said, pouring more wine. She'll get over it. She always does. The way she said always cut deeper than any insult. It wasn't cruelty. It was certainty. She knew I'd forgive them, because I always had. My hands trembled, but not from sadness this time. Something steadier was waking up under my ribs. The old kind of strength, the kind that builds quietly while people underestimate you. The screen flickered again. The kids were laughing now, tossing popcorn. And then I saw something small but sharp. Brittany picked up her phone, took a selfie with the caption visible for a split second. Christmas getaway. Finally some peace without the drama. Without the drama. I whispered the words aloud. So that's what I was now. The drama. I closed the laptop slowly, like tucking a child into bed. Then I took out a notebook from my purse, the one I used to track pie orders when I sold at the farmer's market. On the first blank page, I wrote 2 columns. Left, what they did. Right, what I can do. Under the first line, I wrote, lied about payment, used my booking, kicked me out, mocked me in my own house. And under the second column, after a long breath, I wrote, remember whose name is on the deed. Because it wasn't just a booking, it was my cabin, my name on the mortgage, my signature on the insurance papers, my fingerprints on the wood beams and the paint. They hadn't borrowed a place. They'd invaded it. I called Airbnb support again the next morning, this time speaking with a rep named Jason, young voice, too chipper for 7 a.m. Good morning, this is Jason at Airbnb. How can I help you, Mary? I'm calling about my property, the Fur and Ember. I just need clarification about the host's rights if something unexpected happens. Sure thing. What kind of unexpected? Say a guest misrepresented themselves, I said. Say they pretended to be family friends but weren't. Can the host cancel mid-stay? Absolutely, Jason said. The host has full control. You can end the stay immediately if you feel uncomfortable for any reason. Even on Christmas Eve? Even then, ma'am. He paused. Everything okay? Everything, I said, is finally okay. After I hung up, I poured myself a cup of the inn's burnt coffee and stared out the window. The snow had stopped. The sun was timid but trying. Down the mountain, the trees looked dipped in sugar. Somewhere in that forest, my family was sipping cocoa they didn't pay for. I thought about calling Ethan, maybe telling him I knew, maybe giving him one last chance to be decent. But no. Apologies don't grow in soil that shallow. Instead, I sent a short message through the Airbnb chat. Hi, Brittany, just checking in. How's everything going with the stay? She replied almost instantly. Hey, Mary, everything's perfect. Thanks again for being. Such a sweetheart. We're loving it here. Such a sweetheart. I smiled so hard my jaw hurt. Then I turned on the property management dashboard, checked the access log, and saw every digital footprint. Ethan unlocking the door at 2:11 p.m. Brittany turning up the heat to 76. A new device connected to the Wi-Fi. Brit's iPhone. They had no idea every move was being logged under my account. For years, I'd told myself that motherhood meant forgiving faster than you're hurt. That being the bigger person was noble, but maybe being big just made you an easier target. I spent the rest of that day in the cafe across from the inn, notebook open, pen moving slow but sure. By the time I left, the page was full of bullet points. And at the bottom, one final line written in capital letters, Plan activated, Christmas Eve, midnight. I looked at those words for a long time, tracing them with my thumb. They didn't feel cruel. They felt earned. Before going back to the inn, I glanced once more at the live camera feed. Brittany was arranging gifts under the tree. Ethan was setting up the Bluetooth speaker. The kids were laughing, oblivious, building a tower out of boxes. A perfect picture. I whispered to the screen, smile for the camera, darlings. The host is watching. And for the first time in years, I actually meant it. Christmas Eve morning arrived wrapped in sunlight sharp enough to make the snow glitter like sugar. From the window of the inn, I could see the mountain ridge glowing gold, the kind of view travel blogs brag about. It was almost funny. People pay thousands for peace and quiet. I got it for the price of betrayal. I brewed the inn's thin coffee, added powdered creamer, and opened my notebook again. The first line stared back at me. Plan activated, midnight. All day, I moved like someone rehearsing a dance she'd already mastered, every step precise, calm, patient. I had spent 62 years running after everyone else's chaos. Patience was my fluency. At 9 a.m., I called Airbnb support one more time. Hi, this is Mary Carter, I said, keeping my voice smooth. Host of the Fur and Ember. I'd like to confirm a cancellation procedure. The agent sounded surprised. Mid-stay cancellation? Yes. The guests are not who they claim to be. Do you feel unsafe? I looked out the window, where the world was silent except for wind in the pines. Not anymore. He gave me the steps slowly, clearly. When we hung up, I had everything I needed. Legal, official, irreversible. Then I opened my laptop and sent myself an email with all the evidence attached. Screenshots of messages, confirmation of ownership, booking receipts, bank statements. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a woman preparing an airtight case. By noon, I was in town buying a slice of pumpkin pie from a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and secrets. The woman behind the counter wrapped it neatly. For family? She asked. Something like that, I said. A family tradition, serving dessert before the storm. Back at the inn, I logged into the camera feed. The cabin was alive with noise. Ethan was building a fire. Brittany was decorating cookies like she was auditioning for a holiday commercial. The kids ran through the living room in matching pajamas, shrieking with joy. For a second, the sight almost softened me. Almost. But then I heard Brittany say, "You know, this might be the best Christmas ever. No guilt, no drama, no lectures." Ethan laughed. "Yeah, finally peaceful." And the softness turned to ice. I whispered to the screen, "Peace bought on someone else's pain isn't peace, darling. It's a loan that comes due." That afternoon, I walked down to the cabin's driveway. I wanted to see it once more before I changed everything. The air bit my cheeks, and the crunch of my boots in the snow sounded like punctuation marks. The house looked beautiful. Smoke curling from the chimney, a wreath on the door, kids' laughter leaking through the windows. It was exactly how I'd imagined family to look. And yet, it wasn't mine anymore. Or maybe it never had been. I turned back toward town, leaving only my footprints behind. By 5 p.m., the world was dipped in gold again. My phone pinged with a message. Brittany. "Merry Christmas Eve, Mary. Everything's perfect. The kids are asleep early. You're truly the best host ever," I typed back. "I'm glad you're enjoying it. Don't stay up too late. Christmas morning comes fast." Then I added a little smiley face. Polite, harmless. That's how every trap looks before it closes. I went downstairs to the inn's dining room for dinner. The staff had laid out turkey slices and mashed potatoes for guests traveling alone. I took my plate to the corner table near the window, where the Christmas tree lights reflected off the glass like constellations. A man at the next table tried to start a conversation. "Spending the holiday solo?" "Not exactly," I said, smiling. "I'm hosting." After dinner, I went back to my room, poured myself a cup of cheap red wine, and opened the Airbnb dashboard again. The cancellation button waited there like a loaded trigger. Cancel stay, immediate effect. All it would take was one click. But not yet. They deserved their full evening. The gifts, the laughter, the illusion. I wanted them to feel safe. Because when safety leaves, it should be noticed. At 10 p.m., I watched them through the camera feed. Brittany danced with the kids, her Santa hat slipping sideways. Ethan filmed them, shouting, "Say Merry Christmas!" They didn't know the clock was ticking behind their smiles. At 10:47, I received a new message through the Airbnb app. "Hey Mary, just FYI, the thermostat seems a bit warm. Can we adjust?" "Sure," I typed. "Try now." Then I remotely set it to 80 degrees for a moment, just to watch them fan themselves in. Confusion, before turning it back down. Small reminder, control is invisible until it's used. By 11:30, they were wrapping presents by the fireplace. Ethan poured champagne into glasses, one for him, one for Brittany. They clinked them together. "To us," she said. "To us," he echoed. The kids were asleep upstairs, soft and oblivious. Perfect timing. I opened my notebook again. Under the plan, I added one more line. Step 6, lockout, midnight sharp. At 11:59, I turned off the camera feed for the first time all night. Some moments deserve privacy, even the ones that destroy illusions. I looked at my phone clock, 12:08 a.m. I whispered, "Merry Christmas," and pressed confirm cancellation. The system processed the request, spinning for a moment like it wanted to make sure I was sure. Then the green checkmark appeared. Booking cancelled. Access codes revoked. Guest notified. From miles away, I imagined the exact sound. The sudden click of doors locking. The heaters shutting down. The music cutting to silence. And the confusion rising like smoke. Somewhere in that perfect cabin, my family, my ungrateful, laughing, wine-drunk family, was discovering what it felt like to be locked out by someone who finally stopped knocking. I sat back in bed, watching the snow fall thicker now, softer, endless. I thought of my husband, of the night he built the fire pit behind our first house. He used to say, "You don't get warmth without the burn." He was right. Tonight, I felt both. At first, there was silence, the kind that feels thicker than snow, a pause too clean to be real. Then came the chaos. From the live feed, the cabin lights flickered once, twice, and went dark. The fire in the hearth dimmed to embers. Somewhere inside, someone screamed. I took a slow sip of wine, the cheap kind that burned like truth, and turned up the volume on my laptop. "Ethan!" Brittany's voice cut through the feed. "The lights! What the hell just happened?" "I don't know. Maybe the breaker?" "Check your phone, it's freezing." "Wait, did the heat just shut off?" I smiled. The heater had clicked off exactly on schedule. Then, right on cue, my phone buzzed. Incoming call. "Ethan." I let it ring twice before answering. "Mom?" His voice was tight, breathy. "We're having a weird problem at the cabin. The power's out. Door locks aren't working. Can you, check with the host? Maybe call that Airbnb lady?" I swirled the wine in my glass, watching my reflection ripple in the red. "Sure," I said softly. "I'll call her right now." When I hung up, I opened another tab on my laptop and clicked Airbnb Host Help Center. Then, out of sheer mischief, or maybe justice, I tapped the number for 24-hour emergency host support. The line rang once before a tired woman picked up. "Airbnb support, this is Julia. How can I assist you?" "Hi, Julia," I said, lowering my voice into something calm and practiced. "This is Mary Carter, host of The Fur and Ember. I just had to execute a same-day cancellation due to misrepresentation and unauthorized occupancy. The guests might call you soon. Just wanted to make sure the report's already filed." "Oh, of course, Mrs. Carter. We've got it logged. You did the right thing. Everything's secure on your end." "Good," I said, "because I expect they'll be quite vocal." Not 5 minutes later, I heard Brittany's voice through the camera mic, sharp, panicked. "This is insane. The door won't open. The system says our booking's cancelled. Ethan, call that support line now." Ethan's voice trembled between anger and confusion. "I'm trying. God, my phone's dying." Then I heard it, the tone of the Airbnb hotline echoing faintly through the speaker. Julia's voice again, professional and calm. "Airbnb support. How can I assist you?" "This is Ethan Collins," he said fast. "We're guests at the Fur and Ember. Our power's out, locks aren't working, and our booking says cancelled. We have kids here." "I understand, sir," Julia replied. "According to our system, the host cancelled due to misrepresentation. The listing is no longer available for your stay." "What? That's impossible. The host can't just..." And that's when I pressed the join call button on my end, quietly merging into the line. "Actually," I said, my voice sliding into their panic like a blade through fabric, "she can." There was silence, a long, satisfying one. "Mom?" Ethan's voice broke. "Mom? Is that you?" "Yes," I said. "It's me, and it's my house, my account, my rules." Brittany screamed, "Are you kidding me? You can't just kick us out at midnight." "Oh, sweetheart," I said softly, "I didn't kick you out. You did that the moment you told me to leave." I could almost hear her jaw clench through the static. Ethan whispered, "Mom, please, the kids..." "The kids," I repeated, "deserve better than parents who teach them greed before gratitude." Julia from support cleared her throat, unsure if she should stay. "Ma'am, everything seems in order," she said awkwardly. "Yes, Julia," I replied. "Please mark the case as resolved. The host has regained control." When I ended the call, I sat there in the dim motel room, the only light coming from the laptop's glow. On the feed, Brittany was pacing by the window, yelling into the phone. Ethan stood by the fireplace, staring at the darkened tree. The kids had woken up, confused and crying. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for their tears. I felt free. At 12:25 a.m., I called the local power company and requested the temporary disconnection I'd arranged earlier. Maintenance verification, I told them, just to make sure the lines stayed dark until morning. Then, out of habit, I checked my email again. A new message from Airbnb blinked at the top. Dear Mary, your cancellation has been confirmed. Funds for this stay have been returned to your account. Thank you for keeping our community safe. Safe. The word felt almost poetic. I refreshed the camera feed one last time. Ethan had wrapped a blanket around the kids, trying to keep them warm by the fading embers. Brittany stood apart, glaring toward the ceiling, probably imagining me somewhere. Pathetic, small, defeated. She was right about one thing. I was somewhere, but not small, and not defeated. I closed the laptop, turned off the lamp, and lay back against the pillow. The snow outside pressed against the window like soft applause. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it just clicks quietly at midnight and locks the door behind it. The next morning, the world was white. Snow draped the trees like clean sheets hiding a crime scene. The air smelled like iron and pine. Fresh, cold, absolute. I'd slept better than I had in years. When I walked downstairs to the inn's small cafe, the hostess gave me a cheerful, unaware smile. Morning, Mrs. Carter. Big storm last night. You heading out today? Not just yet, I said, stirring sugar into my coffee. I'm expecting visitors. At 9:12 a.m., they arrived. I saw their car pull into the parking lot through the frosted window. My old Subaru, the one I'd given Ethan 2 years ago after he said his family needed something bigger. Now, it crawled in like a wounded animal. Brittany got out first, wearing my coat. Ethan followed, jaw tight, hands shoved into his pockets. The kids were with them. Sleepy, red-eyed, bundled in blankets. They spotted me through the glass. Mom, Ethan called as he entered the cafe, his voice already rehearsed. We need to talk. Morning, I said, not looking up from my cup. Coffee's good here. Want some? Mom, he started, but Brittany cut in, her voice trembling with fury. You humiliated us in front of our children on Christmas. What kind of person does that? I looked at her, really looked, cheeks blotched from crying, mascara smudged, pride cracked but still clinging. The kind, I said quietly, who finally learned how to stop being humiliated. She slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware jump. You kicked us out. We were freezing. The kids, I interrupted, were asleep when you told their grandmother she wasn't welcome. Do you remember that, Brittany? You said, it's just family. So I took your advice. Ethan's voice cracked. Mom, please, let's not do this here. I turned to him slowly. Where should we do it, Ethan? In my house? Oh, wait, you already tried that. He flinched. The kids hid behind him, whispering. The waitress peeked around the corner, unsure if she should step in. I gave her a small nod. It's fine. I'll clean my own mess. Mom, it was a misunderstanding, Ethan said. You know how Brittany gets... I know exactly how Brittany gets, I said, cutting him off. But what I didn't know is how you get. How easily you forget who raised you. Who kept your lights on when your first business failed. Who paid your rent while you were figuring out your life. His mouth opened, then closed again, words failing as they should. I reached into my purse and pulled out the printed receipts, laid them on the table like evidence. The Airbnb reservation, the payments, the cancellation confirmation, every cent, mine. Every signature, mine. Brittany's face drained of color. You can't just throw money in our faces. No, I said. I threw respect. You missed. The silence that followed was heavy, but not unbearable. I had carried worse. Ethan finally sat down across from me, rubbing his forehead. Mom, we messed up. We shouldn't have... Lied? I offered. Used me? Pretended I mattered only when you needed my credit card? He looked up, shame flickering like a candle in a wind he couldn't stop. I was going to pay you back. I didn't need your money, Ethan. I needed your honesty. For a moment, his eyes looked like the boy I remembered, the one who once built me a clay ornament in kindergarten that said, "A one mom." Then Brittany spoke again, ruining the illusion. You overreacted. You made this into a drama. If you wanted to feel important, congratulations, you got it. Everyone in town's probably talking about you now. I smiled. Good. Maybe they'll remember my name when they book their next vacation. Ethan sighed. Mom, come on. This can't be undone. I know, I said. That's the point. He hesitated, glancing toward the door where the kids waited. They're confused. They think Grandma doesn't love them anymore. My chest tightened, just a little. Oh, Ethan, I love them more than you'll ever understand. That's why I didn't let them watch you keep disrespecting me. Someday, they'll know the difference. He looked down at his hands, his wedding ring dull in the light. Brittany stared out the window, eyes wet, but pride refusing to let the tears fall. After a long silence, I reached into my bag again and slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $500, exactly what the inn had cost me for those 2 nights. This, I said, covers your next hotel, somewhere warm, maybe with mirrors. Brittany blinked. You're giving us money after? I'm not giving you anything, I said. I'm buying my peace. Ethan tried to hand it back. Mom, please don't. But I closed his fingers around it. You take that, and you remember how it feels to hold something you didn't earn. You've had practice. He swallowed hard. Will you ever forgive us? I took a deep breath. The question hung there like a snowflake refusing to fall. I already did, I said. That's how I slept last night. Then I stood, put my scarf on, and looked once more at the children waiting by the door. Goodbye, sweethearts, I said softly. Be kind to each other, and listen to your grandma someday. She might know things your parents don't. They nodded, unsure, the way kids do when they feel the temperature change in a room, but can't name why. As I walked past them, Ethan called out, voice cracking, Mom, where are you going? I didn't turn around. To get my house back, I said. Outside, the air hit my face like absolution. The sky had cleared, blue as forgiveness, endless as starting over. Behind me, through the glass, I could still see them standing. Small, stunned, silent. I'd spent decades shrinking myself to fit their comfort. Now it was their turn to fit into the silence I left behind. By the time I reached the cabin, the sky had cleared. The snow glowed in soft layers, unbroken except for the trail of my boots. Every step made a small, perfect sound, like the world agreeing with me for once. The front door was still locked, the keypad lights blinking red. I entered my code, and the house greeted me with a low hum as the power came back online. Warmth began to crawl through the vents, slow and steady. I took a deep breath. Inside, the living room was a battlefield disguised as a holiday card. Stockings half hung, wrapping paper scattered, a half-empty champagne bottle sweating on the table. The Christmas tree leaned slightly, one ornament broken beneath it, a little clay star that said, "One Mom." I bent down and picked it up. The crack ran right through the word Mom. I smiled anyway. I started cleaning, quietly. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to reclaim the space with my hands, the same way I'd built it. Every wipe of the counter, every folded blanket felt like scrubbing the noise off my life. By noon, the place looked whole again. The fire was lit, the floor was warm, and the house, my house, was breathing like it belonged to me again. I made lunch. Leftover ham from the fridge, reheated potatoes, a glass of cranberry juice poured into a wine glass because dignity doesn't need alcohol. I sat at the table alone, sunlight spilling across the wood, and for the first time, it didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like ownership. Halfway through my meal, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Mom, we got another room. The kids keep asking if they can see you before we drive home. Please, just 5 minutes." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back, "Not today. Tell them Grandma loves them very much. Someday they'll understand why this Christmas was important." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. That was fine. Not every silence is empty. I took my plate to the sink, washed it, and opened the back door. The air was sharp and clean, the kind that smells like endings and beginnings at once. From here, I could see the mountains stretch out, endless, forgiving, untouchable. I poured the rest of the cranberry juice into the snow. It hissed like a small flame going out. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, a new message, not from Ethan. "Hi, Grandma, it's Lily. I found your ornament. I fixed it with glue. Merry Christmas. I love you." Attached was a photo, the clay star taped carefully together, crooked but whole again. I pressed my hand over my heart. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something real, something that could grow. I sent back, "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Keep the ornament. It's yours now." After that, I shut off my phone and sat by the fire. The flames moved slowly, the way peace does when it finally trusts you to keep it alive. On the mantel, I placed a single candle beside the repaired ornament. One small light for all the versions of me that had kept waiting at windows for people who never came. As the afternoon sun dipped, I whispered into the quiet, "Thank you." Not to anyone, just thank you. For the storm that ended things cleanly, for the silence that stayed behind, for the woman who finally came home to herself. Outside, the snow began again, soft, steady, endless, and inside, the house stayed warm. For the first time in decades, that was enough. If you've ever had to choose peace over people, you know how hard and how freeing it can be. Tell me in the comments, have you ever walked away from someone you still loved just to find yourself again? Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to start over, and subscribe. Because every week, there's another story that reminds us, sometimes walking away is the way home.